Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really powerful concept, how true excellence is actually built, not just discovered. You know, if you've ever looked at a masterpiece and thought it was just sheer, undeniable genius, well, you're definitely not alone. But today, we're pulling back the curtain on how a messy, chaotic idea actually transforms into something extraordinary. So let's think about this. Why do some things become extraordinary while others just kind of stay average? Why does a rough sketch eventually become a beautiful painting, or a clumsy beginner athlete turn into a seasoned pro? It's almost never one magical stroke of lightning or a burst of instant inspiration. The real secret? It's the relentless willingness to improve, again and again and again. Think about your favorite book, or that perfectly designed app you rely on every single day. I guarantee you they absolutely did not start out that way. They were built through a rigorous process.
We all absolutely love the myth of instant talent, right? Or the idea that there's just some magic AI prompt out there that's going to do all the heavy lifting for you. But the reality? It looks a whole lot more like a sculptor. A sculptor doesn't just carve a perfect statue with one single strike of a chisel. It's this messy reality of experiments, making mistakes, and continuous improvements. A best-selling author doesn't just sit down, grab a coffee, and type out a flawless novel in one afternoon. It's all about having the grit to revise and actually learn from the things that just don't quite work yet.
So, if you're currently staring at your messy, maybe even slightly embarrassing first draft and thinking to yourself, man, I completely failed, I need you to stop right there. That first version is not a failure. It's your raw material. It's the rough stone. Because think about it, you can't polish thin air. You need that imperfect starting point so you actually have something tangible to shape. That messy draft gives you the essential information you need to begin the actual work of creating something truly great. And that brings us to the human Maximus iteration loop. This is a highly practical 6-step engine for quality that top creators swear by. It goes like this: create, inspect, score, improve, test, and repeat. When you feed your ideas into this engine, you literally remove the guesswork from the equation. So whether you're a beginner artist, an entrepreneur launching a product, or just someone trying to level up a personal project, let's break down exactly how this simple engine works in practice. Okay, step 1 is deceptive simple. Create. You've got to make something real. An idea literally cannot get better if it only lives inside your head. So write that terrible first paragraph, draw that sloppy sketch, record that really rough audio. You aren't aiming for perfection right out of the gate here. You're just aiming for existence. Make it real. Give yourself something to actually work with, because a blank page gives you absolutely zero feedback. Now, once it exists, step 2 is to inspect. This is the moment where you take off your creator hat and you put on your editor hat. You need to look honestly at what you just made. Does it actually solve the problem you set out to solve? Is it useful? Is it clear? What's obviously missing? You really have to look at it with fresh eyes, almost like you aren't even the person who made it, so you can clearly see what truly needs your attention. Moving on to step 3, which is score. Here, you're reading your work on categories like purpose, function, and design. And hey, this isn't to judge yourself or beat yourself up. You do this because you simply cannot improve what you don't measure. If you just look at a project and broadly say, I need to make this better, you're just guessing. A simple scorecard gives you absolute clarity on exactly what to fix. For example, if your idea is super confusing to use, well then experience gets a low score. Bam! Now you have a crystal clear roadmap for what to tackle next. That leads us right into step 4, improve. But listen closely, because here is the trap. Do not change everything all at once. If you go in and tweak 30 different things, and suddenly the project gets worse, you're gonna have absolutely no idea what broke it. It's basically like throwing darts while blindfolded. Instead, find the absolute biggest weakness from your scorecard, make one highly focused change, and elevate the project step by step. Protect the parts that are already working while carefully fixing what isn't. Next up is step 5, test. You have to put your creation in front of real people. You might think the change you just made was completely brilliant, but did the actual audience understand it? Did it solve their problem? And honestly, just as importantly, did fixing that one thing accidentally break something else in the process? Testing ensures you're actually moving forward and not just stepping sideways. Getting that outside feedback isn't a setback. It's a completely normal, incredibly healthy part of any craftsman's journey. And finally, we hit step 6, repeat. You just continue the cycle. Every single time you run through this loop, it acts like pressure and polish on a rough diamond. Every single loop makes your creation smarter and stronger. Look, sometimes it might take 10 loops, sometimes it might take 100, but the magic and the ultimate excellence is always found in the repetition.
This right here is exactly how you close the massive gap between your humble starting point and your final extraordinary vision.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Hey, doesn't AI just do all of this for me now? Well, not exactly. AI definitely changes the game by accelerating the process. It can generate ideas and churn out drafts at literal lightning speed. It can hand you 20 different possibilities in a matter of seconds. But you, the human, are the one providing the vision, the taste, and the standard to look at it and say, okay, this is good, but it needs to be better. AI brings the raw capability, but you bring the critical judgment. That combination, that is the ultimate creative partnership. Which brings us to a really crucial point, the defining difference between average and exceptional. Average creators will build something, see that it basically works, and say, yep, good enough. But exceptional creators, true craftsmen, they look at that exact same project and ask, how can I make this absolutely unforgettable? That gap between good and great, or functional and exceptional, usually boils down to a deliberate choice. A choice to keep refining your work when pretty much everyone else would have just called it a day and stopped.
When we look at the timeline of a project, going from a 5 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 is usually pretty fast and relatively easy. But pushing from a 9.5 to a 9.8? Wow, that requires an almost obsessive attention to the tiniest details. True excellence lives right there, in that final stretch, polishing those tiny things that most people probably wouldn't even consciously notice. Exceptional creators are the ones who push all the way through to the very end of that refinement journey.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. Quality is never just some magical ingredient that you sprinkle on at the very end of a project. Quality is built through every single decision, every focused improvement, and every relentless iteration. Remember, your first version simply gives you a place to begin, but it's the iteration that creates the excellence. So stop waiting around for that perfect first draft. Get your rough stone out into the real world and start building. What will you create, inspect, and relentlessly improve today?